The protagonist of this story, Araji Kai, appeared to everyone around him to be an ordinary and gloomy high school student, but the reality was, the next second, the killer slit the knife across his throat. The following morning, a tired-looking young student was on his way to school. His name? Investigator. Whether that implied the monster was being controlled by a demon. Steed clarified that powerful demons are capable of using spells of servitude, and therefore, they could control weaker monsters. The boy wanted to explain further, but Gallus dragged him away. Kai considered Steri to be of great help in gathering information, but the biggest problem was the fact that this being was being controlled by someone else. Suddenly, he realized that the true identity of those eyes he felt last night belonged to a demon. The demon was clever because Kai barely noticed it. He thought that the demon could be around them at that very moment, and this could be true, since at that instant, he suddenly felt someone watching him. Arashi told Gallus that they couldn't return to their world without killing the demon anyway, but he also didn't plan on staying in this world. For a long time, the other students agreed with him as well. Kai thought it was best for them to quickly learn the weight of the truth. Suddenly, Leonora came in and told them not to be afraid, explaining that they simply didn't know how to use their powers yet, and all they needed was some training. Since they were from a different world, their growth rate would be different from the people of this world. And so a week had passed since the students began training. Kai was reading books in the library and could already understand every letter of the new language. He thought it was quite strange. Araki Kai yawned, thinking about how awful it was to have to go to school after working all night. Our guy, as you can already imagine, that they could understand each other. First of all, our boy was told that his power of judgment was not suitable for battle, so he was left. Outside of training, he was allowed into the library. Our protagonist entered the library with a specific purpose, but he couldn't find many books about his history and culture, or even about demons. While observing the other students, he tells us that the 5 strongest among them were Arumi, the wind controller, Arashi, with his explosion ability, Kanaki, with her telekinesis, Imoto, with his earth-based power, and Rina, with her powers of fire. However, there was another person with a distinctly extraordinary growth rate, Suji. She became stronger than the very 45 people from whom he learned to use the sword. Kai used his power of judgment and noticed that all of her stats were above grade B, and she had barely. Last week he was at the bottom of his class, and suddenly 2 boys approached Kai and began to make fun of him. Our hero realized that even the others were looking down on him and becoming more insolent. After he obtained his new powers, one of the boys tried to intimidate Kai, but Kai fought back and suddenly threw him to the ground with force. At that moment, Leonora and Gallus arrived at the training grounds. She announced that since everyone had grown faster than she had imagined, she had decided to move forward with her plans ahead of schedule. Narumi. He worked as an assassin. When he entered his classroom, the other students began whispering amongst themselves. A guy named Midu Suji greeted him with, asked if she was planning to send them to fight against the Demon King, but she rejected the idea, saying that she wanted them to practice fighting against something else now. Monsters. This information made everyone anxious and slightly worried, but our protagonist was the only one who seemed genuinely excited about it. The following day, Gaius and Leonora escorted all the hero candidates to the heart of a forest. Gaius explained that they were there to conduct combat exercises. The area was riddled with obstacles, restricting their movement as a large group. Therefore, they would be divided into teams of 2 or 3. Hearing this, all the hero candidates quickly formed their own groups, leaving Kai and Kanaki standing alone. The boys were left with no other option but to team up, form a team. Kai observed that the girl possessed a confident, apathetic, and somewhat proud personality. Leonora then announced that, because it was a special occasion, the team that defeated the most monsters would receive a surprise reward. Soon after, the combat exercises commenced. On their way, Kanzaki told Kai that her powers were superior to everyone else's, so she didn't need him to do anything, and requested that he not get in her way. Kai accepted the offer and said that he would leave everything to her. Seeing this, she asked him if he had no pride whatsoever. Our boy didn't place much importance on her words because, at that moment, he sensed 4 entities hiding around them. One of a wide smile. He was the star player of the soccer club and the class president. Kai returned the greeting with a cold expression and sat down at his desk. A girl named Monsters pounced on them, and Kanzaki used her powers to deal with it. Her power was called Domination, and it was an ability that imposed orders. Regarding the user's target, she ordered the goblin to bow, and he did exactly as she commanded. However, she seemed visibly tired, After a few minutes, she explained that she tended to get tired when using her powers for extended periods, as it consumed a lot of mana. Our boy then asked her to simply kill the goblin because another monster was about to attack, but she was a little hesitant because, in her eyes, the monster looked somewhat like a human. Seeing how naive the girl was, Kai brought her to her senses by telling her that it was a monster, and after all, it had tried to attack them earlier. Our guy picked up a rock and concluded that she was just a naive student from Japan. Too accustomed to peace, our boy was playing with the stone when suddenly the other three appeared. Seeing them, the girl quickly ordered the goblins to bow down and asked Kai to help her instead of just standing there. Kai didn't move. He didn't move, and responded that she was the one who asked him not to get in the way. Then, seeing that she had no other choice, she sighed, and she ordered the goblins to, and as she said it, the goblins did exactly as she commanded, taking their own lives on the spot. Our boy was surprised. Naga's Serena witnessed everything, and commented that Kai was as rude as ever. She was a trendy girl who stood out from the other girls in the class. She went to Suji, and he was surprised to see that she could enforce such orders, to which she replied that, although it might seem simple, she must tell him that the more difficult it is, the lower level of the order will reduce the chances of success. The girl, not being accustomed to it, was upset to see the corpses of the Antina goblins, but Kai comforted her with his wise words, which led the girl to ask him how he could be so calm when he didn't even have powers. Our protagonist told her not to worry about him, since that was his strength. He asked her if she wanted to continue, or if she wanted to return if she was too scared, but obviously she didn't want to feel inferior and proudly denied the proposal. He knew she was just trying to appear brave, but he also admitted that she wasn't so bad after all. Meanwhile, Narumi and Asuto are fleeing from a monster that was too strong for them, but running wasn't a viable option, for them, so they decided to attack the monster together, combining their wind and rock powers. Thanks to their combined efforts, they struck the monster with a giant rock, but it barely scratched him. They were helpless and didn't know what to do next. On the other hand, Kanaki wanted to return to her own world, since she hadn't repaid her grandfather for raising her, and she really wanted to show him how much she had grown. She was lost in these thoughts. When Kai asked her if she wanted to continue, since they could get lost, they both started joking around, and she wondered why Kai was said sternly that he didn't need to greet people like Kai. Suji defended him, saying that he might just be tired, which was why he was so cold, mysterious and stubborn. Before they could even respond, they suddenly heard a loud noise. Kanaki recognized the voice as Aimoto's. Kai asked what they should do, and she responded that they obviously had to help her. Meanwhile, Aimoto was thrown into the air by the monster, and as a result, she was wounded and bleeding. Even in that state, she asked Narumi to flee. However, it was already too late, as the monster was about to attack him. Also, luckily for him, Kanaki appeared at that moment and used her powers, ordering the monster to stop. Narumi thanked her, and she said that the monster was too powerful and could not be stopped for very long. Kai asked Narumi if Aimoto was alive, to which he replied that she was alive, but that she was seriously injured. Kai asked him to carry her on his back and get out of there. He was reluctant to leave, but upon seeing, her condition vanished when she left. Kai used his powers to check the monster's stats and was surprised to see some impressively high stats. They were quite high, especially the defense stat. He knew his attacks wouldn't do much damage and also noticed it was a mutant, making him wonder exactly what Kanaki was. He shouted that he couldn't hold on any longer, to which our protagonist responded that he had bought them enough time and they needed to escape. Knowing that she achieved her committed goal, she agreed. However, something terrible happened. She could no longer use her legs because she had used all of her energy to stop the. Suddenly, another student entered the classroom, and upon seeing him, Rina considered him even more ill-mannered than our protagonist. Monster. Seeing how dire the situation was, Kai pulled out a smoke grenade and activated it. This gave him more time to grab Kanaki and hide. She was a little nervous about being carried in his arms, but then she asked him about the smoke, and he explained that it was a smoke grenade he had made. While everyone else was training, our boy was slacking off, since he already had some equipment on him from before he was summoned. Of course, it wasn't much, and he didn't want to use it carelessly, as it was basic Kanaki assassin equipment. She apologized to him because she was the one who suggested they go to save everyone, but she ended up being saved herself. Tiempo attacked the bear for hurting his friends. Suji quickly attacked the monster, injuring her hand in the process. Rina jumped up and used her powers against it for the first time, the monster, but it didn't seem to affect him much, other than slowing him down. They jumped towards the monster again, all while someone watched them from a distance. It was a veteran assassin demon named Delpy. He smiled and told himself that the armored monster would not be able to defeat the hero candidates because of their rapid growth. He liked how calm they were, especially Suji. It was supposed to be an exploration mission, but it was time for a change. Upon entering, the rude student's name was Arashi, the leader of a well-known local gang. Some students greeted Arashi, but when he saw that, of plans, so he decided to eliminate them right there. At that same moment, Suji and the others managed to defeat the monster. He smiled and was about to attack them when he was suddenly stopped by a dagger at his neck. It was Kai. Dapis was stunned to be caught. Kai himself was also surprised. Stressed out and wondering how Kai managed to get behind him, DPS needed a quick escape route. However, Kai anticipated his move, so he slashed at his legs, throwing him to the ground. Our protagonist told him not to make any noise, as he didn't want Suji and the others to notice. Account of him. Kai said that if he answered a few of his questions, then he would let him go. DPS was unwilling to give in, but he had no other choice but to respond. Since Kai had the situation completely under control at that moment, Kai wondered if the person who had been watching him the other night was he. Our boy lets the demon know that he was aware they were being watched, and that it was all part of his plan to let Suji and the others fight in order to lure him out. Aside from this, our protagonist mentioned that he needed information, explaining that it hadn't been long since they arrived in this world, so the demon would have to answer any question he asked. Interrupting briefly, DPS smiled and refused, but Kai mercilessly cut off his hands, saying it would be easier if he simply cooperated. DPS told him not to underestimate him, because no matter what he did, he would never talk. In the next moment, he consumed some poison he was carrying, killing himself instantly. Kai was sleeping instead of greeting him. He went to his desk and yelled at him to get up. He reached out to grab Kai, but Kai reacted faster and grabbed. Because of what this individual did, Kai understood that fighting against the army would not be an easy task. Of the Demon King, Kanaki suddenly approached him and was shocked to see the corpse lying nearby. Kai asked her how long she had been watching, and she replied that it was since the person had fallen to the ground. Our protagonist explained that the dead demon was an assassin from the Demon King's army, and that the monster from before was his pawn. Furthermore, when the first lizard monster was seen, he could be sure that that was also his doing. Hearing this, the girl became a little scared, realizing that the Demon King was trying to kill the hero candidates. She asked him how he had noticed the assassin when no one else had. Our boy thought there was no reason to hide his secret and confessed that his family was in the account of the murderer when no one else noticed. Our boy thought there was no reason to hide his secret and confessed that his family was in the murder business, so he could sense that the other man was in the same line of work. Kanaki was quite taken aback by this revelation, and upon seeing this, our protagonist told her that it was up to her whether or not to believe him. He also asked her not to tell anyone about the corpse, since the hero candidates were already shocked by Emoto's condition. She agreed, and was also a little surprised, as she didn't know that he cared about them so much, to which he replied that it was simply because they weren't used to fighting like he was. All the hero candidates, Arashi's hand first, saying he was sleepy and asking what he wanted. Our guy let go of Arashi's hand, and Arashi, not wanting to look like an idiot, started insulting him, gathered around Emoto, who was seriously injured and lying on the ground. A student named Ano, who possessed healing powers, sat nearby. She used her powers to heal her. Everyone was amazed to see her powers. She announced that Emoto would be cured in about an hour. The hero candidates were praising Suji for defeating the monster, when suddenly Leonora and Gallus walked in, and the candidates asked them where they had been all this time, and why they hadn't helped when they were needed. Gaius explained that he had been there the entire time, watching over them. Putting lives at risk was a natural part of practical military exercises, the kind of battle they would face in the future, and therefore, they shouldn't complain. Suji questioned him, asking why he had said that the area only had weaker monsters, and how that monster had appeared, armored. Leonora said it must be because of the murderous demon, since armored monsters aren't supposed to be in that area. Gaius and Leonora decided to weaken their defenses for future threats like those. However, what they didn't know was that Kai had already killed the murderer. Leonora also added that they should increase their training level, because at their current level, everyone would simply die. Everyone was scared after hearing that, and Suji tried to reason with her, but she told him that getting stronger was the only way to survive. As expected, Asai didn't like what. In reality, it wasn't that simple at all. He was a professional killer who terrorized his victims, and none of them had ever managed to escape him. At that moment, Kanaki-rin asked them to be quiet. She was beautiful and talented in both martial arts and literature, and was considered the top beauty. They were receiving, so he jumped up to talk to Leonora, but Gaia stopped him and then said that they were all just Leonora's pawns and shouldn't even think that they could disobey his orders. The situation was heating up, and Suji intervened to stop Arasi, as they had no other option but to obey them. Suji impressed the old man, and Gallus told the candidates not to worry, because they were important pawns for the country, and nothing bad would. They would do anything wrong as long as everyone acted correctly. Arasi was still not satisfied and attacked Gallus with his explosive power. However, Gallus quickly evaded it and struck Arasi with such force that he fell to the ground. With this, he made it clear that they were all weak, and that, from the next day onward, things would only get more difficult for them. With that said, Gallus and Leonora withdrew from the location. Arasi stood up, his face bleeding, and swore that he would kill Gallus. The next day, the researcher was in charge of training, and after a brief discussion about the previous day, he announced that they would be fighting monsters inside their research center. The facilities within were filled with all sorts of monsters, as he was raising them for his experiment. Soon the drill began, or rather, the combat exercises commenced, and the hero candidates prepared to fight the monsters. Kai noticed that everyone was surprisingly calm, even though they seemed cold and aloof at school. Arashi tried to confront her, but was interrupted by Emoto, a serious girl from the disciplinary committee who was very concerned with order. Forced to fight. The combat exercises were a little over the top, and Shua commented to Stadi that the monsters were too strong for the candidates. But he firmly responded that Lenora had asked him to be very strict with everyone, and therefore he could not and would not facilitate their training. Furthermore, he added that hero candidates with their divine protections should not lose under any circumstances. Above all, he emphasized that their will was the most important factor. Suji asked if it would really make a difference, and he replied that if done correctly, they could increase their power level and even gain new derivatives of their power. Kai also joined them and told Suji that, in his judgment, he could see that Suji possessed a new power. Suji was surprised to hear that, and asked Stadi if she could test it out. Stadi was excited to witness the power firsthand, so he allowed her to test her power. New divine protection. Suji used her new powers and, in an instant, severed the monster's power, followed by its hand and head with a single, clean cut. Kai knew that Suji wouldn't struggle against an armored monster now. He wondered if her judgment had leveled up and awakened a new divine protection. Kai noticed that someone else also had received a new power, and it was Arashi, but he decided not to tell her about it. Later that night, Arashi was planning to kill Gallo, tie up Leonora, and ask him for the way to return to his real world. Several other candidates supported him and were excited to leave this damned world. Arashi asked. While looking at the list of people to fight, a boy named Narumi Yoshia told Arashi to just ignore her. Narumi to join them, since they wouldn't have a better opportunity, and he knew that Narumi was also fed up with that world. Narumi hesitated, but in the end, decided to join them. Their strength. The next day, Suji was training when Kai approached him and commented on how hard he was working. Suji replied that he was still weak and needed to improve, to which Kai responded that, with his current power level, he could defeat half of the knights in this world. Suji said that it wasn't enough because he couldn't defeat Gayu. He needed more power to protect everyone. Kai asked him what he thought of Leonora and Gayu, and he replied that he knew they were being used as pawns in their battle, but he also knew that they wouldn't be harmed. Kai asked if he meant that he would risk his life until the Demon King was defeated. Suji agreed and said that he had made the decision, which meant he alone had to fight, would make him the hero of the country and allow him to defeat the Demon King. He would try to negotiate and ensure everyone else could live. Kai asked Leonora if she would permit him to do so, and just then, she and Gallus entered and told Stadi that he would be in charge of training the candidate while she was away. Stadi was happy to do his part and said that he would not disappoint her. With that, she and Gallus retreated, and later, while they were on their way, Gallus asked her if she was sure she had made and it was just another normal day in a class with many problems. Kai still kept his head down when, right decision, to which she asked him what made him think that. Then Gallus asked her not to play games and tell him directly, adding that he was plotting something. She agreed, suggesting it could be a rebellion against them. He asked her what her next move was, and she replied that she had a plan. Gallus was a little worried about the rebellion, especially since they were hero candidates, after all, and they had powers, so it could be disastrous for them, but Leonora remained calm, confident that they wouldn't be able to defeat her. Never. He added that they needed to establish a hierarchy in order to crush the rebellion and break their fangs once and for all. He also told her that she noticed a few other suspicious things, but decided to leave them alone for the time being. Later that night, Kai fought a monster and killed it, the same way he killed the monster on the first night. It only took him 1 second, and when he used his judgment ability on himself, he realized that he had leveled up. Suddenly, another monster attacked him, but unlike the previous one, this monster was tough, and his swords couldn't pierce its skin. It was the perfect moment to test his new skill. He used his new power, which allowed him to detect the target's weak point. After detecting its weak point, he eliminated the monster in the blink of an eye. With this, he realized that it wasn't a bad skill, but he needed more to survive in that world. He suddenly felt something, a strange sensation coming from beneath Suji's feet. A bright blue light began to emanate from the ground, and to become even stronger. At that moment, more monsters attacked him, but Kai defeated them far too easily. Now he needed a larger test subject in order to Filmo. Testing his skill, he heard human footsteps, saw Kanaki, and asked what he was doing there so late at night. She replied that she was looking for him, because he wasn't in his room. Although he appreciated her kindness, he asked her to leave, since the forest was a dangerous place when night fell. He was used to fighting at night, but she wasn't. Ignoring this, she shushed him and asked what he was doing there. Anyway, he told her he was testing his new powers, and she asked him what his new power was. But our boy had no reason to tell her, so he started teasing her, and she confessed that she was worried about him. When confronted, she blushed. He started making excuses, and the atmosphere became somewhat romantic. However, they were talking when they suddenly noticed smoke rising in the distance. It was a fire, and even though they were a bit far away, they realized that their dormitory was on fire. They both rushed toward the location and saw other candidates fighting monsters. Seeing them, Narumi was relieved to see them both safe. He explained that when he woke up, he saw the fire and the monsters. This couldn't have been caused by monsters alone, so Kai deduced that it was the work of a human and that the leader must be nearby. He instructed them to find and capture whoever was responsible. Magic Circle appeared. Soon, everyone in the class noticed it and was confused and surprised. The magic circle grew larger. At that moment, Stad appeared at the top of the ice and told them that their judgment was correct. Kai said that he had been wondering how the monsters appeared, but now it all made sense because they were all monsters from his laboratory. He also gave them some medicine to make them stronger, to become stronger, because they were too weak to be of any use. Kai asked him what his goal was and what benefit he would gain from kill the candidates. Steady told them that it was a direct order from above, and he was ordered to eliminate the candidates. Even if it meant discarding his current position, he smiled and said he had nothing against them, but he would have to kill them with sadness. They asked him if it was Leonore's order, but he denied it, saying of course not, since it wasn't that bitch's order, but the Demon King's order. The Demon King's spy told them that if he did the job well, they would offer him the researcher position. Kai asked him if he had fallen so deeply into darkness that the only thing he cared about was researching monsters. Steed retorted that monsters were far beyond human comprehension and ordered his own monsters to attack. Kanaki used her powers to stop them, but it was no use, as they quickly broke through her spell and immediately attacked her. Kai jumped in and saved her, which greatly excited her, while he was amazed by her powers. Kai continued killing the other monsters, taking down almost a dozen of them. Its size engulfed Suji entirely on the classroom floor. He commanded everyone to evacuate the classroom, but Kai knew they wouldn't make it out in time, and Steed was now furious, since Kai didn't even possess a strong power. Our protagonist used the power of judgment on Steed, and saw that all his stats were poor, but what caught his attention the most was that he had also mastered powers similar to Kanaki's, only even stronger, and that was the reason why Kanaki's power was nullified. He shook himself off and used something he didn't want to use, but he had no other choice. He told Kai that he would soon know what he would use. Kai jumped to attack him, not wanting to waste any time, but suddenly, a giant red dragon spewed fire at him. This was Starry's trump card. The dragon began throwing rocks at him, which made Kai tell Narumi to take Kanaki and leave. As the next attack approached, Kai used his power again to locate the dragon's weak point, which was its neck, and he tried to cut it. His attack power wasn't enough to do the job. Suddenly, Aras appeared and attacked the dragon, then started bragging about how he could hurt it, but the dragon attacked him. Kai told Aras that they had to defeat the monster together. Aras asked him why he would need him ***, to which Kai replied that he could detect the weak points but he couldn't defeat it since he didn't have enough attack power. Aras was being stubborn and said that he didn't need help from $1 rookie. However, they didn't have time to think it through, because the dragon immediately attacked again. The dragon threw fire at Aras again, and the bright light blinded everyone. They were all teleported inside what appeared to be an old castle. Everyone was unconscious on the floor, and Kai, finally, the stubborn one, decided to team up with Kai. Kai explained that the weak point was a scale on its neck. Kai planned to get its attention so that this form would attack the weak point with its destructive explosion. Seeing that the dragon was still, Star immediately ordered it to kill them. The dragon charged at them again, and Kai distracted it. Thanks to Kai's distraction, Suji had the opportunity to attack the dragon's weak point of the dragon. With just a single blow to the weak point, the dragon was defeated in the blink of an eye. At this, Kai asked Star if she had anything else up her sleeve that her trump card had already lost. Star said that she still had other monsters, but unfortunately, Suji and the others had already defeated all of them. Star tried to escape, but Narumi caught him. Kai asked him to tell them everything, and he readily agreed, as he was a coward. But before, if he tried to say anything, his body turned purple, and he died. They had cast a curse on him that would kill him the instant he tried to leak information the following day. Next, the candidates confronted Leonora upon her return, because she was the one who had left Star in charge. She apologized and explained that she didn't think a demon as weak as him could cause so much damage. The candidates were surprised to learn that she was already aware the demon tamer was a spy. They asked her that if she knew he was a demon spy, why did she allow him to be near them? In her defense, she said that he was the first to regain consciousness. He noticed that the building was made of stone, with several large pillars providing cover, and there was only one exit. Soon, had told them that their training was going to be more difficult, and therefore, what happened was just a part of their training. Gallus accused them of not be careful enough to avoid raising suspicion during the night. Turning to the main topic, Leonora informed them that they would all be visiting the royal capital. Next, focusing on the unveiling of the hero candidates, a public parade would be held in the royal capital, and they would take the stage as the main participants. That night, everyone departed for the capital and set up camp in a field. While they were eating, Ross told his henchmen that there were about 30 soldiers accompanying them, and they weren't actually that strong. He said it was time to put their plan into action, and from what he could see, they could easily outnumber them. He asked one of his minions to summon Narumi and her Kai group, was listening to their speech and agreed that there were very few soldiers accompanying them, but that was only because Gaius and Leonora were confident that our guy then went to Suji and asked to speak with her later that night. Meanwhile, Arasi and Narumi met in the forest. They were ready to attack the soldiers when Suji and the other candidates stepped in to stop them. Suji said that she had heard that Arasi was trying to assassinate Leonora and Gaius. Arasi was surprised to learn that her plan had somehow been leaked. The other students also began to regain their senses. Everyone was panicking, but Suji calmed them down, and Kai was relieved that Suji was someone who They tried to reason with her, telling her that there might be another way to resolve the situation besides simply eliminating them. Arasi then told Suji that all she did was talk, asking him if he had a plan, to which he replied that he would act as a pawn to defeat the Demon King, and in return, he would ensure the safety of everyone. Arashi wasn't ready for these deals and told him to get out of his way, but Suji and the others weren't going to let him pass, since they could not agree. They reached a point where they began to fight. Suddenly, 2 soldiers entered and told them to go to sleep, since they had an early morning trip. Because of this, Arashi left, saying that he was already fed up with the weakness, and that there was no point in talking with them. The next day, everyone arrived at the royal capital, which was overly crowded due to the ceremony. The people in the streets were amazed. Seeing the hero candidates, the people seemed to have a great deal of faith in them. At the castle, they were greeted by the Holy Knight Rhinus, who asked them to rest first. All the candidates were pleased and happy to receive the royal treatment, which included everything from soft beds to hot baths. The hero candidates were also offered the finest food. While they were enjoying all of this, Kai decided to gather more information, but there were many guards. Suddenly, he noticed that the knight who was showing them around was talking to his soldiers about how the candidates for Araji's classmates hated and bullied him because of his antisocial personality and strange aura, could prevent the entire class from losing their composure completely. Arashi stood up and said that they couldn't waste any time, and he asked his 2 lackeys to follow him. Heroes were much stronger than normal children of their age. One of the soldiers expressed concern about allowing the hero candidates to enter the royal capital because, as the followers of the Demon Kings know, They are after them, and he believes that reaping souls will provoke those demons into action. The kings told them not to worry, since the candidates were strong and could handle anything. Kai, who happened to be listening, everything, now had even more questions. So, he considered going into the city at night. He went to one of the pubs and ordered some snacks. The people were talking about the candidates for heroes and how they seemed like normal children. Based on what he was hearing, our boy realized that the people there were more afraid of the church than they were of the king or the nobles. Kai asked the bartender to tell him more about the country, explaining that he was new to the city and didn't know much. The waiter told him about the Demon King and how he was attacking the kingdom, adding that the Demon King could even seduce humans with his overwhelming power. He also mentioned how the Demon King's followers had blown up a noble's estate a few days prior. After hearing all of this, Kai left the bar, thinking that having the candidates in the capital wasn't the best situation. Suddenly, Kanaki approached him, concerned about him. Our boy explained to her that he was gathering information because they were in unfamiliar territory. They continued on, but Kai stopped him, saying he could hear footsteps approaching from the other side of the door. Kai sensed the presence of a man and a woman. She was visibly worried and offered to help him, but he refused, which she didn't appreciate. After a brief argument, he finally agreed to let her help him. Kai asked her to gather information about the royal capital, which she immediately agreed to, and then left to collect it. Information, and also about Kai himself. However, what they didn't know was that someone was eavesdropping on their entire conversation. The mysterious man smiled when he saw her leave. Kai finally returned to his room, but after a tedious search, he didn't find anything of importance. But at least he learned about the existence of a new enemy. Suddenly, he heard noises coming from outside his room, and when he went out to investigate, he saw the other candidates gathered in the hallway. When he inquired, he learned that Kanaki had disappeared. The boys hadn't even realized he was gone because they didn't. He shared his room with no one. When asked if he knew anything about the girl, he denied knowing a single thing. Suji concluded that she wasn't in the castle, and as such, the sun would rise soon, so they needed to go out and search for her immediately. Everyone scattered to look for her. Moments later, Kai found her student ID, lying in the street. As soon as he picked it up, 4 masked men attacked him, but his reaction time was so fast that he instantly knocked down 3 men and asked the 4th who they were. Since they were all fairly inexperienced spies, the 4th spy was too stunned. As they proceeded, the door soon opened, and a girl and an old man entered the room. They both resembled medieval knights and princesses, and were dressed to flee, and Kai demanded he tell him everything he knew. Meanwhile, in what appeared to be a castle, Kanaki was tied up and 2 spies were interrogating her, but she wasn't answering. They wanted information about the hero candidates. Since she wasn't cooperating, one of the spies ripped her shirt open. Unbeknownst to them, Kai was already inside, spying on them. He used his powers of judgment and noticed they were quite weak. He couldn't believe the girl had been captured by such ordinary guys. Since they were just normal people, Kai had no problem dealing with them. Afterward, he approached the girl and felt ashamed to see her in that state. He unlocked her chains and was about to leave when he sensed someone rapidly approaching. It was Rainis, who immediately attacked them, but luckily, they both managed to dodge the attack. He smiled and said he really should kill them himself. He confessed that, besides being a holy knight, he was also general of the Demon King K's army. He then said that the country was nearing its end, because even the capital was swarming with enemies. K used his judgment and saw that Rainis was a powerful warrior, a true all-rounder. The two faced off again, and K managed to dodge his sword, but then Rainis used fire magic. Fire, catching K off guard, but he somehow dodged the attack. K, now on the defensive, attacked again, but then Rainis enveloped his sword in fire, and unusual and old-fashioned clothing. The girl greeted the students, saying they were impressive, and calling them hero candidates. The students were surprised, said it was all over for K. Koka quickly pulled out his weapon and shot him right in the middle of the forehead. The shot proved fatal, and as a result, Rainis fell and died. Kai didn't want to use his gun for something like that, especially since he had limited bullets, but he had no other choice. He needed to fight face to face if he wanted to survive. He wanted to survive in this world. Kanaki was surprised to see him with a gun and commented on how terrifying it was to know that someone in their class was carrying a weapon. He explained to her that it was just standard equipment for an assassin. She, in turn, thanked him, and he asked her why she hadn't used her power of domination, to which she replied that after they chained her hand with that chain, she somehow couldn't use her powers anymore. When they were leaving, she told him that those guys were trying to attack everyone in their class, but he already knew that because he had interrogated the 4th guy. Captured earlier, the fourth guy told him that they had orders to kill all the hero candidates, and that he was the one who revealed Kanaki's location. They wanted to use her as a hostage while attacking the others. What he couldn't understand was why he wasn't killed by the death curse, like what happened to Starry. This meant that a demon wasn't responsible. It meant that some humans were against them. It was almost morning, and Suji found them and was happy to see her. Kai told her everything about the Demon King's cult, and how humans were also against humanity. Upon seeing them, Kai analyzed them both, and concluded that the man had the physique of a swordsman, and was also on guard, and as for the girl, humanity. The problem now was that, unlike with monsters, they couldn't easily identify which humans were their enemies. This meant that they needed to be more cautious, and decided not to tell Leonora, as she would simply tell them to handle it themselves. So, they ended up deciding to gather everyone to decide on a course of action. While they were talking, smoke suddenly appeared around them, and soon, they were surrounded by even more cult members, everyone prepared to fight, not only against these three, but also against all the other candidate groups. They were cornered by the men. Kai noticed that there were 6 of them, and their stats were obviously lower than Rhaenys, but they were still strong. Without wasting any time, the 6 men jumped towards them. Kanaki used her powers to stop them, and Kai pierced their heads with knives, sharp, killing them instantly. Suji was a little stressed seeing that they were all humans. After all, Suji tried to debate the matter, but Kai silenced him. Saying that at the end of the day, they were enemies. A remaining cult member attacked Suji, and he tried to reason with him, but the cult members said that he was only serving his master. Kanaki was ready to use her powers again, but Kai stopped her, to tell him that he wanted Suji to kill the man. Suji broke the man's sword and asked him to surrender if he wanted to live, but the man he sensed faint muscles, but she seemed quite ordinary to him. The girl introduced herself as Leonora, the Archbishop of the Holy Country, and the man accompanying her was too stubborn and attacked. Suji injured his hand in the counterattack, which resulted in Suji slashing his body. The man was moaning, and Suji wanted, leaving him there to die, but Kai told him to eliminate him on the spot, otherwise he could become a threat. Suji was reluctant, but ultimately did it, exactly as Kai had instructed. Meanwhile, Arasi and her henchmen also defeated all of the men. The last man was killed, without showing any mercy, due to Arasi's power. Rina and the others found it difficult to kill humans, except for, the other girls were getting injured. Suddenly, Leonora appeared on the scene, and asked if she should give them the promissory note. The men became even angrier upon seeing Leonora, and she stated that, as they were her candidates, it was only natural that she would come to help them when they were in danger. One of the men retorted that she didn't even have them in her gentlemen with her, so how would she handle this? She mocked them, saying they were just a group of amateurs seduced by the Demon King, and that she didn't even consider them enemies. He didn't even consider them enemies. This provoked all the men to jump at her, but she simultaneously used her power of domination to pin them all to the ground. Everyone to the ground. The men couldn't move, and Rina said that her powers were like Kanaki's, but Leonora asked her not to compare her powers to something like his domination, as her skill was superior in every aspect, from range to power. Rina asked her why she saved him, to which she replied, Gaius, who was a knight, and also her protector, told Arasi that he had never heard of the girl or that country before, and he questioned if she was toying with them. She replied that she had mentioned giving a passing grade. They all thanked her for protecting them, and one of the men stated, she addressed her dress and asked her not to ignore them. He asked her what she was going to do with them. The girl looked down and apologized to the man because he was still alive. He then used his power of domination over all the candidates, ordering them to kill the men lying on the ground. His hands began to move on their own, and they all killed all the men against their will. Such was Leonora's power that it was impossible for the candidates heroes to be able to control their own bodies. Kay and Kanaki were watching everything unfold from afar, and Kanaki was surprised to see her able to control so many people at the same time. It was clear that her reach and power were on a completely different level. 12 hours after the attack, that all the candidates gathered again in the hall. Many of them were in pretty bad shape. Narumi, shocked, declared that she wouldn't let her get away with it, since she forced all the candidates to kill people against their will. Suji blamed himself for not arriving sooner, but Kai explained to them that it wouldn't have made any difference, since none of them were strong enough to resist Leonora's power. Kai knew, with certainty that, since the general of the demon army had been defeated, they wouldn't be able to make any moves for a while. Then he asked Kanaki to accompany him. She asked him the purpose, and he told her it was to find a way to deal with Leonora's domination magic. He wanted the help of... The girl responded that she certainly wasn't messing with them. Suji stepped forward and explained that they had suddenly found themselves in that place and were, therefore, a little nervous. Accompany him. She asked him the purpose, and he told her it was to find a way to deal with Leonora's domination magic. He wanted the help of someone who possessed powers similar to hers, then requested that she use her powers to dominate him. Upon hearing this, the girl immediately became flustered. After this, we learn that the kingdom held a massive parade the day after they repelled the cult members, celebrating the summoning of the hero candidates. This was the trial in which the hero candidates demonstrated their power during their battle against the Demon King's cult. They were all welcomed with open arms by the citizens of the royal capital. Once all the candidates had gathered, Leonora informed them that she would like them to return to the temple city. Kai explained to the others that this was the name of the city in which they were summoned, and he believes that it is under Leonora's control. Sugi asked Leonora if she wasn't going to join them. Leonora replied that she still had some matters to take care of, so she would entrust them all to Galos's care. Rina said she wished she could return, but her dormitories had been burned down. Rina noticed that one of the girls seemed quite distracted and couldn't even answer the questions being asked of her. In short, it was clear in her eyes that she was extremely afraid of Leonora. We can deduce this because when Leonora approached, the girl jumped in fear. After this, Leonora left with... The girl began to explain everything to them so that they could understand the reason why they were there. She started by saying, a smile, and all the candidates harbored resentment towards her. Soon, Galos informs all the candidates that they will be departing for their destination. At this time, everyone camped for the night. Arcee and the others ventured back into the forest. Kanaki asked Kai if they were really going to do it that night, and he replied that Leonora wasn't there and all the soldiers were weak, making it the perfect opportunity to kill Galos. Under these circumstances, there was no reason for him to stop them. He would simply enjoy the spectacle. Meanwhile, Narumi had led Galos deep into the forest, claiming to have seen a giant monster. Galos followed him alone because the path supposedly led to the royal capital, and a monster lurking there posed a danger. Suddenly, Arcee ambushed Galos from behind, attacking with all her might. Galos wasn't expecting the attack, which took the hit and started bleeding. Seeing that he was still alive, Erasus was a little surprised, since not even his best attack had been able to kill him. The attack was quite effective, causing Gaius to lose his footing and suddenly step on a landmine, which exploded. Erasus smiled and said that it was all a trap set up for him. Gaius then used mana to defend himself, but was still seriously injured. He said that he was disappointed in him, as he didn't expect him to ambush him in this way. Suddenly, all the other members of Erasus's group surrounded that they were summoned to a parallel world as humanity's hope to defeat the evil Demon King. They were the candidates to become the hero. Old man. Seeing the gravity of the situation, Gaius threw a ball of light into the sky, which acted like fireworks. Ki could see this from away, commenting that Arai had devised the plan because the ball of light was a distress signal. The soldiers saw it and headed in that direction. However, they were unable to reach their destination because Kai stood in their way and killed them all. Meanwhile, the candidates were beating up Galos. He could barely keep up with them, and his powers were soon overwhelmed to the point that he couldn't defend himself in time, resulting in the loss of his only arm. He was completely covered in blood. Arai congratulated him, saying he was tough for his age. Narumi told him about the distress signal and said that he was trying to buy some time, but Galos replied that there was no need for that anymore. Just then, Leonora entered with her usual smile and said that Galos was pretty much cornered. This was quite unexpected, and the candidates were surprised to see her in that state, as were Suji, Rina, and the others. The candidates witnessed Kanzaki using her domination power to restrain some soldiers. She insisted that she was following orders, but they didn't believe her anymore. Since they knew she wasn't the type to follow anyone's orders blindly, Kai stepped in and claimed she was following his orders, which greatly surprised Suji. However, what surprised her the most was hearing that Kai had killed the guards. Kai explained that Gaius was already preoccupied, fighting against. However, everything changed one day, when our protagonist and his classmates were suddenly transferred to another world, a world of swords and magic, of the parallel world. It was difficult for the students to believe that something like this was actually happening to them. Gaius then said to Arcee, Gaius, so he took care of the guards himself. Suji and the others finally understood the whole situation. Suji then asked if he would join Arashi, to which he responded, he was just doing what he wanted to do. Kai told him he should go look for Arasi instead of bothering him. He was right, so Suji and the others left. to look for Arasi and his group. Leonora told Gallus that he was losing, and he accepted it, saying that he couldn't fight his old age after all. Arasi said that after everything he had been through, he wasn't going to back down, tuck his tail between his legs, and run away. One of the candidates asked if she was the one controlling them. Leonora responded by saying that there were other conditions that needed to be met as well. If they had a large mana reserve to resist, it wouldn't be as effective, but for those who always relied on their powers and weren't used to, controlling her mana was easy for her. Unable to control all of them, Arasi called her a coward and challenged her to prove that she wouldn't be able to fight them head-on. She smiled and said that she would take care of them herself, adding that she would break their fangs. Without wasting any time, Arasi jumped towards her. She quickly summoned a large chunk of rock and sent it flying. Then, she manipulated other elements like fire, water, and air to defeat the other candidates. Narumi came, picked up Arasi, and flew into the sky. Suddenly, Suji and the other candidates also arrived, told him to stop the fight, and asked him to watch his mouth while speaking with the country's saint. Arasi remained unfazed, which provoked Galu to draw his sword, but before he could commit, what would she gain from it? Arasi told him to stop him with force if he wanted to, because he hated her pacifistic methods. Suji asked the others if they thought so. Himself and Reina stood up, declaring her support for Arashi. Leonora laughed, pointing out that they were still fighting amongst themselves, and added that at that moment, they were so responsible for starting a rebellion, and then she questioned whether they actually expected her to forgive them. Even if they stopped the rebellion at this point, she wouldn't forgive them, because they would still have to be held accountable for initiating a rebellion. Leonora conjured a massive cyclone and injured everyone. Suji became tense seeing everyone injured, but Asi told him to calm down, saying that if he wanted to protect everyone, then he would have to resolve the situation himself, or else everyone would die. Suji understood the gravity of the situation, and realizing there was no other way, prepared to fight, and following in his footsteps, Reina and the others, they did as well. Leonora declared that she would show them the difference between herself and them. Meanwhile, not far away, Kanaki asked Kai what their next move should be. He told her that once Leonora used her magic to enslave everyone, then he would join the fray. Until then, they should put their trust in the other candidates. At the same time, we see how the candidates were already prepared to fight. Gallus managed to stand, saying that he was weak, but that he still wanted to fight for her, to prove his loyalty. Leonora healed all of his wounds, including his arm, and it could be said that he was in better condition than ever to nonsense. Leonora calmed him down. Arasi jumped towards the old man, and Kai was surprised by his bravery. Before Arasi could launch an attack, Gallus, fight. The candidates were frightened because they had done so much to corner Gallus, but now he had returned, fully healed. Rena told him not to worry, as their numbers had increased, compensating for their individual strength. Leonora told them they could attack her whenever they wished, as she considered this battle to be a test for them. She added that if they couldn't defeat her, then they couldn't become heroes. Soon, the fight began, and Gaius noticed that it was difficult to fight against Suji, who wielded a magic sword. For her part, Leonora used water magic to attack Suji, but Rena nullified it, although Suji was still injured by the attack. Quickly, everyone attacked Leonora, but none of their attacks could even touch her. Meanwhile, Kay was hiding in the shadows and used his assessment skill to check Leonora's stats, and he noticed that although she was a powerful mage, her defense was weak. A good physical attack would be enough, but it would be a little difficult because Gaius was in the way. Arasi asked Suji to take care of Gaius, and then go defeat Leonora. Suji had a problem. Her magic couldn't affect Leonora. Then, one of the candidates gave her a steel sword, and Leonora commented that now, he looked ready for combat. The other candidates couldn't help Suji, since their powers wouldn't work on her, and they also couldn't help Arasi, since he was engaged in close combat. The short-ranged Arasi was able to face Gaius head-on, because, even though the old man was healed, through his sword, making a small cut on Arasi's head. His attack was so swift that no one saw it coming. Leonora apologized for his aggression, and said she would explain. Stamina was still low. However, Arasi was also unable to use his explosive power, which put both sides in a similar situation. Leonora was using ranged attacks against Suji to keep her from closing in with her sword. Suji thought there had to be a way to get close and defeat her. Leonora smiled, saying it was to be expected of Suji, as very few people in the country could dodge her attacks. It was still a one-sided battle, since he wasn't close enough to her, and he couldn't even rely on the other candidates. Suji rushed toward her at full speed, negating her wind attacks. Leonora also used earth and fire attacks, but Suji dodged them. Then he realized that he was subconsciously using magic as armor, which meant that he was growing so rapidly in such a short time that she became somewhat afraid of him, but she managed to overcome that fear by using her powers. Meanwhile, Arashi could no longer rely on his powers and wondered what he could do to defeat Gallus. Because he was distracted by his thoughts, Gallus slashed his abdomen with a single strike. Arashi was angry with himself for being unable to defeat an old man. He knelt on the ground, and Gallus told him that this was as far as he could go without his powers. At that moment, Arashi remembered that even without his powers, he was destined to be strong, and then he struck Gallus so hard that the old man fell to the ground, knocked out and done everything in detail. But everyone needed to be quiet and listen to her to do so. Her behavior suddenly shifted from calm to terrifying. She, bleeding, which secured his victory. Meanwhile, Suji thought that she had to win, or her friends would suffer the consequences. With this thought in mind, she stood up, and an aura, a menacing presence, surrounded him. Leonora noticed his amazing resistance, but she was quite relaxed because she knew he couldn't get close to her. However, she was wrong, because in the blink of an eye, Suji was right in front of her and managed to cut her hand. This was something she did not expect, and according to her, it was impossible. But she didn't have time to think, since Suji was now right behind her. She managed to use the powers of the water to get away. Somehow, the girl understood that Suji had instant movement. With this advantage, Suji used her new power again, and was just an inch away from slicing her neck when she suddenly ordered her to kneel. She couldn't move, and she smiled and said that she didn't want to use that power, but she had no other option. Kai noticed that Kanaki had finally used his trump card and told him it was time to move. Leonora smiled and refused. She had expected to use enslaving magic, but Suji forced her to use it on herself. Thanks to her own enslaving magic, Suji now lay at Leonora's feet like a statue. The other candidates, they quickly rushed to save Suji, but Leonora ordered them to stop, and they all froze halfway. Leonora then told everyone that they did a good job, and that she would therefore give them a passing grade. She added that she hadn't expected Gallus to lose, but after all, he was just a knight. Explained that, due to the Demon King's invasion, humanity in this world was facing extinction. Her country, the Holy Nation, and could easily be replaced. Besides, as long as she could control them, it wouldn't be a problem. Faced with such a situation, the candidates were losing hope, and if they didn't have any countermeasures, they would be eliminated. She told everyone that the reason they allowed him to summon the candidates was so that when the time came, he could freely control them. Otherwise, they would become threats. Suddenly, 3 knives attacked her from behind, but she easily dodged them and said she knew that he was hiding the entire time. It was Kai, and he replied that he was surprised she paid attention to someone as ordinary as him. Leonora said that, since the beginning, she had a strange feeling about him, and that she was disappointed because she didn't expect him to throw himself into a losing battle, as she had ordered him not to move, and he was also under her spell. She was explaining her magic when, all of a sudden, a bullet struck her shoulder. Leonora was surprised to see that he could move and even shoot while under her spell. She questioned how he was able to do that, since she was certain that she was using her magic on him. Not wanting to give her many explanations, he shot her again in the abdomen, and she couldn't understand what kind of weapon it was, because weapons didn't exist in her world. Her defense couldn't keep up with the attacks. He explained to her that it was a weapon that could kill anyone in his world, and also mentioned that he had few bullets and didn't want to waste them. He continued to resist, but he no longer had the power to completely stop the invasion. Kai was surprised by this and thought the story was rather generic. Annoyed, she unleashed her firepower, but only her robe was hit by the flames, and she vanished the next second. Next, he was standing directly behind her, pointing his weapon at her head. He commented that he knew she wasn't skilled in close-quarters combat, and his enslavement magic has no effect on him. She was shocked and couldn't understand why Kai was able to nullify her magic. To accomplish this, Kai had taken a risky gamble, but ultimately, he managed to win the bet. The reason he was able to accomplish all of this was Kanaki. That night, when he asked Kanaki to dominate him, he explained that the skill activated first would take precedence over any newly cast skill. This meant that, if she used her power of domination on him first, it would negate the enslaving magic. As for the candidates, they had divine protection, so their powers should have been superior to the Kanaki's. However, he doubted this, since his ability was weaker than Leonora's magic. Kai, he explains that there's a possibility, since the same thing happened with Star. Back then, the girl had used her domination magic on the monsters. But because Star had cast her spell earlier, she was able to regain control over her monsters. It was a pretty risky gamble, but they didn't have another option. They had another chance. In the present, Leonora realized that Aki was the reason her magic wasn't working on Kai, and she was right, since Kai. The girl continued, saying that they were humanity's last hope, the ones currently considered candidates to be heroes. Upon hearing this, was under Kanaki's spell. This cheap trick really bothered the saint, but regardless, Kai told her that this was the end for her, and if she tried anything strange, and he won't hesitate to pull the trigger. Thanks to our protagonist's cunning, Leonora was captured and handcuffed. The handcuffs sealed her magical power, and these were the same handcuffs that had previously been used on Kanaki. Leonora asked Kai what he planned to do with her, to which Kai replied that the demand was simple. If she sent them back, then he would free her. She apologized, explaining that it was impossible for her, since all she could do was invoke magic. Sending them back required a different kind of magic. Kai knew she wasn't lying because she didn't have the ability to send them back. He then asked her how he was supposed to send them back after all. They will defeat the Demon King. She explained that the summoning required a massive amount of energy, which is why they relied on their god to summon them. In other words, it was God who had summoned them. Once they defeated the Demon King, God himself would send them back, but she didn't seem certain about it. Her statement, because no previous candidate had ever been sent back, this was because they were killed by the Demon King. There's a chance that there are some survivors, but they disappeared after a brief conversation. Kai was ready to kill her, but Suji stopped him. Suji told him. The students responded that they couldn't do this, since they had never fought before. In the situation they found themselves in, things became a little tedious, that he was cooperating only because he thought Leonora could send them back, but since she couldn't guarantee it, he wanted to maintain his candidate status. To be a hero, since he didn't want to become a traitor in that world just yet. Kai asked if they were no longer traitors, and Leonora assured him that she would pretend they weren't. Nothing happened that night. Suji said that the crime of killing a saint was serious and could cause them a lot of trouble, which is why the other candidates also agreed with him. They agreed with him. Narumi was still on Kai's side because, being in such a situation, it was better for them to eliminate her. Suji agreed that killing her was the most sensible thing to do. But what would they do after killing her? That killing her was the most sensible thing to do. But what would they do after killing her? Kai understood Suji's point of view, but, in an unexpected turn of events, he shot Leonora right between the eyes. Everyone was surprised to see Leonora's body fall to the ground, and Kai used his smoke grenade and disappeared from view. There, the candidates became upset, and were clearly not happy with his decision and his actions. Kanaki thought that, in reality, it all boiled down to what I had previously made plans with her a few hours ago. When Kei and Kanaki were planning, he told her that the primary objective was to capture Leonora, and find a way to return home, but if that proved impossible, then he would kill her. He knew that if he captured her, and they couldn't return to their world, then Suji would try to protect her, and at that moment, he would kill her and run away. He was planning to bear the sin of killing the saint. He simply stated that was the reason why. This causes some of the girls to start crying. Gallo said that it might sound impossible, but they would have to try, since there was no way to. He left some of his guards alive, so that they could place the blame on him. He told them to put all the blame on him and return to the Empire. She wasn't sure she could do it, but he assured her that she could, and even suggested she use her powers during the negotiation to ensure everything worked out. She then asked him where he would be going. He said he would go, and told her not to worry about him. Meanwhile, far away in a dark castle, a man was reporting his failed assassination attempt on the Demon King's hero candidates. Kill the Demon King's hero candidates. The king told him not to worry, because ultimately, the hero candidates would definitely appear on the front lines. The game was becoming interesting, and the Demon King was enjoying it. 2 days after the incident, Kei was living in the forest, near a town that was half a day's walk away, since there was no way he would be allowed to enter the town entrance. After killing the saint, he decided to sneak in at night. He needed to earn some money, and he spotted a tavern. Inside the tavern, there was a lovely atmosphere, and someone asked him where he was from. He lied, saying he was from a nearby town and that he was now looking for work. The man advised him to become an adventurer. He would have to accept jobs from the guild, and they would pay him for it. He also told him that the guild urgently needed new adventurers, so they weren't even asking for identification. He stayed at an inn, and luckily, no one recognized him. Then he went. A mysterious messenger announced to everyone that they were heroes summoned to this world to defeat the Demon King, a truly daunting task. Return to their own world unless they defeat the Demon King. The students were even more surprised upon hearing this. Kai knew that he only said that in order to the guild in that town and saw all kinds of people. He went to the reception desk and registered. They asked him about his name, age, and origin, so he used his alias, Zidane, and lied, claiming the Demon King's army had destroyed his city. The Siren was the same codename he used in the real world. Furthermore, the receptionist explained how the guild system worked. There were ranks from A to F, and the resubsode, higher the rank, the greater the reward offered. Since he was new, he was registered as an F-rank adventurer. After this, our protagonist went to the bulletin board to accept his first quest, and soon, 3 guys approached and started bothering him, curious about what kind of mission he chose. They mocked him, disliking that a rookie would choose that particular task. They thought it was impossible for him to complete that task. Kai was surrounded by some adventurers who asked him not to accept the mission. Kai calmly turned around, thanked them for the warning, and asked them to be left alone. Upon hearing this, the boys became frustrated, thinking that Kai was very arrogant. Seeing him surrounded, people foldo, he muttered that those guys were picking a fight with a rookie. Again. One of the boys tried to attack Kai, yelling that Kai needed a lesson, but to his surprise, Kai blocked the attack and quickly grabbed his hand. The boy was shocked and yelled at Kai to release his hand. Kai released him. To motivate them, he thought that people who had always lived in peace couldn't suddenly start killing, so they needed experience for that, and calmly, because he didn't want any trouble. However, the boy told his companions to attack Kai together and teach him a lesson. They all tried to attack him at once, but Kai easily defeated them and calmly left the guild. As he was leaving, he thought to himself that at least he now knew the average level of adventurers in the guild. Compared to the hero candidates, they were surprisingly weak, so he decided to finish the mission as quickly as possible. The scene then changed to the forest, where Kai thought that, according to the mission information, the kobolds should be nearby. Suddenly, he noticed animal tracks on the ground, so Kai followed them, and as he advanced, he felt that someone was near him, and that there was more than one. Kai also noticed that the mysterious creatures were quite good at hiding, which aroused his suspicion. They were kobolds. Out of nowhere, a kobold appeared from behind and launched a sneak attack, but Kai sensed it and easily dodged the blow. Our boy noticed that these kobolds were wielding a human sword, which meant they had probably defeated an adventurer. While he was thinking this, another kobold came from behind and attempted an attack. This time, Kai dodged and scooped up some dust from the ground, throwing it into the kobold's eyes. While the second kobold was blinded, Kai punched the first kobold in the face. As he fell to the ground, Kai grabbed the sword and quickly finished him off. Seeing this, the second kobold, on top of that, talent, RC stood up with blood on his head and cursed them for forcing him to fight when they were the ones who had brought him there. He added that he was surprised, but before he could react, Kai attacked and quickly eliminated him with a knife. Kai then used his judgment skill to verify he checked Kobold's stats and realized that these creatures posed no threat to him. Feeling confident, he decided that he could hunt them easily to earn more money. After some time, the scene shifted to the guild, where everyone was staring at Araji Kai in utter shock. Araji Kai had brought back the kobold ears as proof of his subjugation and asked the receptionist if that was sufficient. She responded affirmatively and inquired if he was certain he had truly accomplished it alone. Kai answered yes, explaining that hunting kobolds was very easy, but finding them had been the challenging part. He reflected on how, even though he possessed the skill to fight them, he still lacked his scouting ability, demonstrated by seeing Araji and returning after defeating the kobolds, surprised those around him, and they questioned whether hunting kobolds was normally such an easy feat. At one point, they even speculated that Kai might have been an E-rank hunter from somewhere else, but someone present mentioned that they had heard Araji was still a rookie. The receptionist interrupted this conversation, asking Kai and Araji to wait while she went inside to prepare their reward. The scene then shifted to the night, where Kai was walking towards. He hated people like them. Gallus noticed that Arcee's spirit was still intact and wondered if he could become a useful warrior. Gallus held his sword and, somewhere, counting his money. He wondered if he could earn that much just by hunting those weak magical beasts. He realized that, for now, securing funds for survival was paramount, so he decided to remain in the city and earn money as an adventurer. Araji Kai believed that building a network around the guild would facilitate easy information gathering, Suddenly, someone appeared before Kai. Upon seeing this person, Kai inquired whether he had any business with him. Our protagonist didn't believe this person appeared significantly stronger than those he had fought within the guild. The man introduced himself as Lyle, a B-rank adventurer and the person in charge of the city's guild branch. Our protagonist honestly didn't care much about this and responded with a casual tone. Lile then asked Araji Kai if he was the same person who had caused trouble for his men at the guild earlier that day. Araji Kai responded by saying that those boys were the ones who started the altercation. In response, Lyle furiously shouted at Araji Kai, demanding that he not to lie, as he had heard that an unknown rookie had beaten his men. Araji Kai then admitted that yes, he was the one who had beaten them up. Upon hearing this, Lyle shouted that if that was the case, she wouldn't hesitate to teach Araji Kai a lesson. Lyle then tried to hit Araji Kai several times, but to his frustration, Araji Kai easily dodged all the attacks. Finally, Araji Kai got bored and used his legs to trip Lyle, causing him to fall to the ground with a thud. Decided to kill Arcee, since he might cause them trouble. But before he could do anything, he saw Leonora healing Arcee's wound, and he, seeing this, Leela was stunned and exclaimed in pain. Araji Kai then commented to Lile that his speed was impressive, but lacked refinement, and that his movements were too broad, causing him to inadvertently leave openings vulnerable. Hearing this, Leela became furious and attempted to attack, again demanding to know what Araji had said. Kai once again blocked his attack, grabbing his hand and quickly throwing him to the ground. Our boy explained that he believed Lyle wasn't used to fighting against humans because his missions generally involved magical beasts. In response, Lile angrily demanded why, if Araji Kai possessed so much power, he had attacked his men. Kai replied that he had already explained to him that it was a misunderstanding and offered to clarify everything from the beginning. Sometime later, the scene shifted to the guild, where Lyle apologized to Arak. Kay admitted it was his fault, even scolding and punishing his own men for lying, acknowledging that he was to blame for not doubting them in the first place. He shouted at his men, demanding they apologize to Araji Kai, which they reluctantly did, after he insisted. Araji Kai replied that as long as the misunderstanding was cleared up, he didn't mind. He then mentioned that he had a question to ask. He apologized again, assuring Araji Kai that he would gladly answer any questions he had. Araji Kai then explained that he was a traveler, and had explained that the power he was using was called the System, which had been granted to him by his gods, and he simplified it for them by saying it was like magic, and thanks to it, registered as an adventurer to earn funds for his travels. He continued, mentioning that he had another reason for registering as an adventurer, and the curious Lyle asked Araji Kai what he desired, considering his formidable power and his mysterious background. Araji Kai responded that he was searching for a way to travel to another world. Upon hearing this, Lyle and his men were shocked and asked him to clarify, wondering if such a thing was even possible. One of them speculated that he had heard rumors of hero candidates coming from another world. Araji Kai confirmed that he was, in fact, talking about finding a method to enter the world from which those hero candidates originated. Lyle responded by speculating that, if that were the case, it would likely involve magic, and they themselves were not particularly familiar or skilled with magic. Araji Kai acknowledged that such information would not be easy to come by or obtain, and expressed his hope that Leal and his group might find some leads. Leela responded that there was possibly only one person who could provide them clues, and that person was the wise Elvana. Araji Kai asked in confusion who this sage was. Lyle was surprised and asked Araji Kai how he didn't know him, explaining that the wise man was an elf whose advice had helped many countries. Hearing this, Kai thought he might have heard about the sage somewhere, and asked if it was true. Kai then remembered reading about an elven sage in books before. It was known that the elves lived in the momentarily. This caused a new phenomenon to occur in his world. Ka noticed that he was familiar with their culture, and wondered if they had summoned people from his world before, deepest parts of the forests. He explained that elves were now rare, and with their stories being considered legends, they rarely left their forests. Exploring the outside world, Arij K concluded that the elf who ventured out of their forest and acquired wisdom became known as the Wise Lil. He added that he had heard the sage had been alive for over 100 years and was famous for possessing great wisdom and knowledge. Leela also mentioned that the sage was a renowned spellcaster with extensive knowledge of spells. Upon hearing this, Kai wondered if elves were known for their strong affinity with spirits, which helped them master magic. Kai also considered that, even if there wasn't a specific magic to send the heroes back to their homeworld, perhaps they could achieve it with spells. Leela's subordinate, Roka, interrupted, asking if the sage was still alive, mentioning that he had never heard of the sage and that no one had ever seen him. Leela acknowledges that Araji Kai is correct. He's right, he laughed, replying that he didn't have any information on that subject. He then apologized to Kai for not being able to provide him with any useful information. Araji Kai assured him that the information was useful enough. Kai then mentioned that it was getting late and that he was heading back to the inn. Hearing this, Lyle expressed her curiosity, asking Araji Kai what he planned to do after discovering a way to travel to another world. He walked towards Suji, explaining that power was the reason he had summoned them all. He raised his hands, causing Suji's wrist to glow, and soon a sword made of light appeared in his hand. Araji Kai smiled and cryptically replied that he would leave that up to their imagination. Confused, they watched Araji Kai leave for the inn. The scene shifts to the guild a week later, where Mia is handing Araji Kaisu the reward for completing the mission he undertook. Walking out of the guild, Arika reflected on how a week had already passed since the incident with Lyle and her group, a week during which she had managed to save some money. Suddenly, Lyle and his subordinate approached Kai and inquired whether he had completed his quest, suggesting that they all go for a drink together. Kai responded with a strange, somewhat sad expression and turned down the invitation. Seeing this, Lyle remarked that Kai was incredibly boring and they bid him farewell. As he walked on, Kai reflected on how he had finally gathered information regarding the sage. To know with certainty, the wise man's name was Buret, and about a decade prior, Banur had served as an advisor to the country. In retirement, Banur Buret was said to be living near the western border, in the area where the country was fighting against the Demon King Araj's army. Kai then concluded that there was no reason for him to remain in the city any longer, and decided he should go and visit the so-called sage. The scene then shifted to the sacred temple city of Alpha, where the hero candidates were having a meeting with someone, Heinrich, the captain. Furthermore, he explained that they could wield the power of the system and awaken their innate abilities of divine protection. Of the Holy Knights of the 8th Knight Corps, who mentioned that a month had passed since he had assumed responsibility for overseeing the hero candidates and taking over the Holy Falls duties, the captain asked Suji if she had any complaints thus far. Suji replied no, saying that everything was fine because she, as the captain, was doing a good job. The captain expressed his happiness upon hearing this, stating that the hero candidates were valuable assets to the country and that he treated them with respect. Aimoto thanked the captain for his concern. She thought to herself that the captain was clearly different from Leonora. Despite this, she couldn't help but feel something suspicious about the situation. Heinrich then directed them to focus on the main topic, mentioning that during the meeting of the day before, it had been decided to mobilize the hero candidates. Suji was surprised and asked if he could explain what they were doing. Sent to the front lines. Heinrich answered yes, confirming that the hero candidates were indeed being sent to the front lines. Front lines. He explained that there were still ongoing battles on the western border. The captain then showed them a map and explained that they would be mobilized to a fort on the front line. Suji replied that she understood and was about to ask about the promise, but the captain interrupted her. He admitted he knew he was making a selfish request, as he had summoned them all there, and now they were unable to leave. He then asked them to lend him their powers, stating that he would keep his promise to protect those who were unfit for battle. Suji gratefully thanked the captain for ensuring their safety. Heinrich then explained that, in the meantime, he would assign them some tasks, emphasizing that everyone needed to contribute in order to earn their keep. Suji agreed, recognizing the practical benefits of having worked that morning. She also asked Sugi to inform everyone, and she would ensure that they were prepared for the journey. After leaving the hall, as Suji and Aimoto headed back, Aimoto expressed her relief that Heinrich had accepted their request. Sugi agreed, admitting that he had initially worried about their demands, thinking they were excessive, but was glad that everything had ultimately worked out. Aimoto speculated that the knights lacked the confidence to manage the hero candidates without Leonora, which could explain his modesty. Suji agreed, pointing out that without Leonora, the knights would be on high alert. Aimoto then, he inquired about Arakai, wondering where she had gone and what she was currently up to. The scene then shifted to the past, depicting when Leonora was murdered, and Aragi abandoned the hero candidates. The bishop asked anxiously who could have killed Leonora. Nagase responded that the culprit was Arakai. He revealed that he was also one of the candidates to become a hero. Upon hearing this, the bishop and his guards were shocked, and the bishop quickly asked it grants them superpowers, and naturally, Aikai receives the most powerful one of them all. If you're curious to find out what it is, then let's dive into this story from the very beginning. Suji pointed out that no matter how much power they were given, they still wouldn't be able to fight immediately. She responded that, in fact, urgency about Arakai's location. Nagase replied that Arakai had escaped and remarked that he was surprisingly fast for a jest. Traitor. Hearing this, the guards began arguing amongst themselves, debating whether to immediately dispatch an inquisitor if Araji Kai's betrayal was confirmed, or if they should first verify whether Saint Leonora had truly been murdered. The story sounds very convenient. Doubting all of this, the bishop said that, the story sounds very convenient. RC furiously demanded that the bishop clarify what he had just said, to which the bishop responded, he doesn't want to deny the story outright, but there was a possibility that all the hero candidates had conspired together to eliminate Leonora. At that moment, Suji tensed up, surprising everyone. Leonora's knight stepped forward and explained that, witnessed the incident, and revealed that Suji and the others present had, in fact, been trying to protect the Saintess, but they were overwhelmed by Kilo, which resulted in the death of Leonora, the other knight. He corroborated the account, which led the bishop to state that he would believe it if his own knights confirmed the story. He inquired about Kai's strength, asking if he truly was that formidable. Suji confirmed this, explaining that Araji Kai had been concealing his true power all along. The bishop then invited them they will be trained, and during their training, they will be taken care of. Suji took control of the situation and told her companions, have a more in-depth conversation in his chambers, and invited one of the hero candidates to join them. Unbeknownst to them, Kanaki was eavesdropping. Secretly observing from behind a wall and using his abilities, Suji was relieved that they had managed to resolve the situation. With Kanaki's help, the scene returned to the present, where Aimoto asked Suji if he was still worried about Araji Kai, implying that there was no reason for concern. Suji smiled and outwardly agreed, but he admitted that deep down he was worried because he knew that Araji Kai had sacrificed himself for their sake. Suji was tense because he had resolved to protect everyone, but Araji Kai had taken that burden upon himself, leaving Suji feeling powerless and unable to help Kai. Inside the room, Suji gathered everyone together and announced that they had received orders to mobilize to the front lines. The front lines instructed all personnel to prepare for combat and depart the following morning. Some of the men grew tense. When the reality of facing an actual battle dawned on them, Nagase approached and told them it was too late to be afraid, reminding them that they had voluntarily chosen to join the combat group. Shiori asked if they were the only ones being sent to the front lines. Suji responded that they would be sent along with the core members of the 8th Night under the captain's command. He asked Suji if there was any news regarding Arahi Kai. Suji explained that she knew they were afraid, but the first thing they needed was information and protection. She told them that they should listen to them for now, and the companions. The temple had placed a bounty on Kai's head and deployed a significant number of personnel to track him down. He added that there has been news regarding the whereabouts of Arahi Kai. Upon hearing this, Kanaki became visibly saddened, prompting Suji to attempt to comfort her, but before Suji could, Nagase angrily shouted that she didn't care if Kai was a traitor or not. If she found him, she would burn him to ashes. Kanaki felt deeply upset and wondered why Arahi Kai hadn't taken her with him. The scene then shifted to the jungle, where everyone was traveling, the hero and knight candidates, along with the guards. As they moved forward, Sanuk sensed something and stopped. At that moment, Shiori also shouted that she was tired and asked if they could take a break. Aimoto replied that they only had a lunch break scheduled, so it wasn't possible. It seems that they are going to. They walked until darkness fell. Some of the boys wondered if something was going to happen, since they had been walking for the past 2 days without anything occurring. Suddenly, a DC tells everyone to halt. The hero candidates inquire if something is amiss, to which a DC answers that he can sense a magical beast lurking behind the bushes. A knight then arrives and yells at the hero candidates, questioning why they stopped so abruptly. Suji explains that they sensed a magical beast in the vicinity. The knight agreed with her. When Leonora saw that everyone was ready, she extended her hands and began to bestow her divine powers upon them. Mireille received, shouts that he doesn't see anything, and reminds them that they must follow his commands, as they are not allowed to do anything without his authorization. Seeing and hearing the way the Guardia approaches them, and becoming furious, grabs the knight by the neck, demanding to know what he said. The knight, scared and tense, asks Arashi what he's doing, and even urges him to stop, since this could bring them trouble. Arashi furiously shouts, asking why he should follow the orders of a useless knight. Suddenly, something attacks Arashi, forcing him to release the knight in order to dodge. It's a magical beast with a rabbit's face, but with armed hands. The guards tense up and announce that it's a sharp rabbit, urging everyone to prepare for battle. But before the guards could react, the sharp rabbits charged at them, knocking their swords away. One of the sharp rabbits looked furiously at a guard who was ready to attack, but before the guard could be harmed, a strong flame suddenly appeared out of nowhere and finished off the sharp rabbit. It was Arasi who used her power to defeat the beast. The guard thanks Arasi for saving him, but Arasi tells him to step aside so that she wouldn't be blocked. Arasi proceeded to easily defeat each of the sharp rabbits, one by one. Some students were surprised to see Arasi's power, which was far more destructive than what they had witnessed before, but Arasi was not satisfied and felt that her power was not yet. Telekinesis. Arashi obtained explosion powers, Rina received fire powers, Yosilla received wind powers, and the others also received different and surprising powers. Enough compared to Araji Kai's power. The scene then changed to a moment in time where Araji Kai was pointing a gun at Leonora. He was furious to see Arahi Kai again. Arasi was actually frustrated because Arahi Kai hadn't shown any fear towards him from the start, which indicates that Arahi Kai was definitely stronger than him. Arahi Kai's lack of reaction only reinforced this belief in Arasi's mind. Arasi then shares that, with the explosive power he received, he thought he had become stronger, but he is very upset to realize that Arahi Kai is even stronger than him. Strong. The scene then changes to the present, where Suji interrupts Arasi's thoughts by asking him what happened, since he seemed to be in a bad mood. Humor. Arasi replies that it's nothing, and that he is just bothered by someone giving him orders. Sometime later, the scene shifts to the western border of the Fortrust Holy Kingdom. Initially, Captain Amelia of the Holy Knights introduced herself as the leader of the Order of Knights. Stationed there, the captain asks Amelia what happened to the guard dog Aloe. Captain Amelia responds that he passed away approximately a week ago. Hearing this, the hero candidates were a little surprised. Amelia then mentioned that she wanted to let them rest first after their long journey, but she couldn't. She couldn't finish her sentence because the guards interrupted, shouting that the Demon King's army was about to attack. Amelia cheerfully comments that, as Leonora asked if anyone else was left, and Kai raised his hand. She gave him her powers as well, and he noticed that his field of vision was, everyone heard, there is no time to rest, so she is counting on them. Suji agrees and instructs each hero candidate to prepare for. The battle commences. Arsi, for his part, appears very determined and ready for the upcoming fight. The guards sounded the alarm, and Pao shouted that the demon army, it was drawing nearer. The sheer number of monsters was immense, which surprised Max and made him wonder why there were so many of them. Then, he rallies the guards to begin firing and reduce the number of monsters before they get too close. The guards begin to shoot arrows, while the fire skill knights also launch fireballs. Despite all the fireballs and arrows that struck the monsters, they continued advancing, proclaiming their intention to destroy the humans. Suji was surprised to see that the monsters did not retreat, even after receiving heavy blows. Amelia explained that those attacks alone wouldn't easily defeat the monsters, and warned the hero candidates not to underestimate their strength, the monsters' resistance, emphasizing that humans were much weaker by comparison. Suji asks Amelia, with some tension, what they should do. That Amelia instructs Suji to follow Heinrich's orders and commands precisely. She states that she herself will lead the Knights of the Fourth Order to fight the monsters. Heinrich explains that he was going to say the same thing, but some individuals were already fighting there. Changing, and as soon as he finished obtaining his powers, he was able to read Leonora's stats. His eye color changed to red, and Leonora informed him that, against the monsters. Confused, Suji asks Heinrich who he's referring to. Nagase informs Suji that the captain was talking about Arasi and her group, since who had come down earlier. Suji was stunned and asked the girl to repeat what she had just said. When the smoke cleared, they saw that the humans, they had come to confront them directly. The monsters laughed at Arasi and the others, mocking them as fools who had come to find death. Arasi, for her part, replied that she didn't care if they were demons or anything else. She would simply erase the monsters from existence. The fight began between them. Inside, some monsters broke through a wall and attacked the guards. When a monster was about to take down a guard, Suji intervened, blocking the attack with her sword. This was quite unexpected. Even the guard was surprised to see. To Suji. Suji then unleashed the power of her sword, and with an even more powerful attack, she quickly defeated the monster. Afterwards, Suji felt confident that she could handle it, realizing that her power continued to grow. She then shouts and tells the others that they can see it's a battle they can win, so they must fight without fear. Hearing this, every hero candidate was filled with enthusiasm for the fight. As Uji prepares to fight again, he reminds himself that he must not hesitate, knowing that any sign of hesitation would disturb the rest of the team, since he was their leader. He reflects on, he had received the power of judgment, which was quite rare. This power would allow him to see the statistics and details of his target. Out of curiosity, he tested his. How C taught him the cost of his naivety. Imoto also urges everyone to stop watching and join Suji in the fight. Nagase begins to use his attacks, and Kanaki begins to dominate the monsters. In this way, the battle continues between the monsters and the candidates for heroes. The guards, witnessing the hero candidates fighting the demons, are astonished by how they are dominating the Demon King's army. The captain shouts and instructs the guards to provide cover for the hero candidates so they can push back the demons. They nodded and charged forward, engaging in a lengthy battle until they finally defeated the Demon King's army. Emilia joyfully announces their victory, and the guards begin to celebrate as dusk approaches. Suji remained lost in deep thought. However, he was interrupted by the captain, who asked him if it was his first time fighting like that, and how he felt about it. Suji replies that learning to manage battles on such a large scale is a challenge. He explains that his perspective narrowed during the battle, which made it difficult for him to issue effective commands. Heinrich praised Suji for his efforts and credited the candidate heroes for their role in winning the battle. However, he warned them to remain vigilant because, although they had faced mid-ranking enemies in relatively small numbers, high-ranking demons would pose powers on himself and was able to see his own statistics. Arasi also tested her powers and teased Kai, saying that all he got was a new eye color, Kai, a different challenge due to his superior abilities. Suji, upon hearing Heinrich's warning, becomes serious and assures him that he will remember it. Then the scene shifts to the demon's lair, where a monster is reporting on the battle to Stone Gaia, one of the king's army's 4 heavenly kings. The monster apologizes for failing to fulfill his duties, which greatly angers Stone Gaia. The scene then transitions to the Great Ekot Forest, where Araji Kai was traveling. As he neared the edge of the forest, he contemplated that his journey to visit the sage should soon be over. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Araji Kai sensed something approaching him, and tongues were aiming to strike him. Our protagonist managed to dodge them, somehow, but noticing their incredible speed, he wondered what kind of tongues they were. As he scanned his surroundings more carefully, Araji Kai, and saw some new magical beasts, which their system identified as tongue baboons upon scanning. After checking their status, Araj Kai concluded that they were somewhat mediocre creatures. The tongue baboons attacked Araj and Yi again, but our boy easily dodged their attacks. However, realizing that they were approaching quickly, Araj and Yi quickly displayed their agility by jumping away from the spot to avoid their attacks. The baboons attacked Araj Kai again with their tongues, but this time Araj Kai quickly drew his knife and sliced one of the tongues in half. The baboons. He noticed that the students were acting haughty and arrogant, even though they didn't have much information about the world yet, and they were shocked by this move. And Araj Kai continued cutting until he had severed all the tongues from their mouths. The baboon then tried to attack with the tail, but it was too slow for Araji Kai, who easily and quickly dodged it. He needed little effort to defeat the creature and the other baboons. They were stunned and tense, unsure of what to do next. Araji, now furious, challenged them, asking if they would come to him, or if he would have to go to them and deliver their demise. Sometime later, the scene shifted, showing the corpses of the baboons with their tongues torn out, lying on the ground. Araji Kai reflected that these magical beasts are powerful and seemed to be appearing little by little, leading him to wonder if it was because he was approaching the Demon King's territory, or perhaps because the forest was far from the cities where the knights and adventurers resided. As he ventured deeper, Araji figured that the further he went, the higher the probability of encountering powerful beasts became. Magical. But he was somehow grateful that his appraisal skill allowed him to detect some of these beasts. So, Araji Kai decided to remain alert. The scene then shifted to some time later, where Araji and Kai finally reached Mount Uranus, a natural defense barrier that slowed down the Demon King's army invasion. Araji then explained that the highest peak is called Reaper Wolf Mountain. Let's get to the bottom of all of this. The scene opens with a man sprinting through a dark alleyway, and it's clear that his powers were also borrowed and could be taken away at any time. However, he remained calm because our protagonist had many other abilities. Reaper. And there's a rumor that a wise man lives at the top of that mountain. He then thought that, If he remembered correctly, there should be a small village at the foot of it. From Reaper Wolf Mountain, Araj Kai arrived at the village. However, he was shocked to see the entire village in flames and wondered if the village had been attacked by the Demon King's army. As Araj Kai suspected, the village had indeed been attacked by the Demon King's army. The Purder lie. Monsters were standing in the village, and Araj Kai watched them from the rooftop of a house, hidden from sight. Araj Kai thought the place was supposed to be far from the front lines, so he decided to be more cautious. The monsters asked their leader, named Hector, what they should do, suggesting that slaughtering the humans should be acceptable. Hector orders them to cease the massacre and suggests enslaving the humans, then asks if they have gathered any information regarding Van, the wise sage. The monster confirms this, stating that the sage resides at the mountain's peak. Reaper Wolf. Hearing this, Hector became frustrated because his information was accurate, which greatly annoyed him. He emphasized that Van was their highest priority. Van, also known as the wise sage. Hector instructed the monsters to rest in the village for the night and then prepare to ascend the mountain. Reaper Wolf the next day. A tense monster expresses his concern, mentioning that Reaper Wolf Mountain is known to be the nesting ground of killing people. After everyone received their powers, Leonora instructed them to get some rest for the night. And so, the hero candidates, the Reaper Wolves, which are untamable beasts, they believe that unless they defeat the Reaper Wolf, they will be unable to achieve their objective. The second monster, he inquires about the reason behind the monster's initial statement. The first monster explains that domination magic is ineffective against beasts, magical creatures with high intelligence. Furthermore, he had heard that the 4 heavenly kings once managed to tame a dragon, but it would be impossible for him to do the same with the Reaping Wolf Hector. With the Reaping Wolf Hector, he also mentioned that he wasn't particularly skilled in magic, so he spoke about skills that he didn't possess. They possessed. It was clearly pointless, but their only viable option was to defeat the indomitable magical beast. The other monsters agreed with Hector's assessment. Seeing this, Arhaikai concludes that the entire group is well organized under Hector's command, and wonders if this organization is due to the influence of high-ranking demons. When Kai checks Hector's condition, he learns that Hector is one of the few high-ranking demons in the Demon King's army, and Kai realizes that facing Hector directly in battle would be extremely challenging. Suddenly, Hector also sensed that someone was watching him, so he signaled the monster to go investigate, as he felt someone was lurking around. Kai was quite impressed to see that Hector's senses were remarkably sharp. Immediately, the monsters, they were escorted to their personal rooms. Kay then snuck out the window, seeking more information. Outside, guards were patrolling and were searching for Araji. Kai was relieved because he was skilled at hiding and stalking. Suddenly, while retreating, he noticed that some humans had been captured by the monsters, and they were all tied up with ropes. Despite seeing the captured villagers, Rikai, he decided not to intervene, since his main objective, just like the demons, was to find the sage and meet with him. Sage. Besides that, he knew he had to climb this mountain and become stronger than the Demon King's army. However, regretting the Demon King's army case, we'll end the video here. But bro, if you liked it, leave a like and a comment so YouTube can help this video reach more people. That's all. Bro, blessings, and see you next time. We're discussing how weak the hero candidates seem to be. They found it amusing that these children were chosen to defeat the Demon King, Devil. One of them mentioned that the Holy Reaper must know something they don't. Chai overheard the entire conversation and used his power of judgment to check the statistics of one of the guards, noticing that he only knew swordsmanship. He quickly departed in search of more information. He had also learned, regarding the city's structure, it was a fortified city. He wanted to enter the inner castle, but the gates were heavily guarded, so it was difficult to sneak in. If he were caught, he knew the extent of the trouble he'd be in, so he decided against it, as there was no need to rush things, and it would be better to return at another time. Meanwhile, in an open field, Rena was searching for a good location, and accompanying her, 2 willow trees were there to practice their new powers. They began to conjure their respective elements and observe them, which who appeared anxious and frightened. When he paused, he glanced back, thinking he might have gotten away, but suddenly someone stopped him by putting "we're doing" because Rena was curious to learn more about the whole divine protection matter. Cal was hiding in a bush, spying on them when he suddenly felt a strange sensation, and the girls also heard an odd noise coming from the bushes. When the source revealed itself, they noticed that it was a giant, lizard-like creature attracted to the girls' magic. Kai quickly used his magic to check the monster's stats. was shocked by its overwhelming statistics. Soon, the monster roared and began chasing the girls. Kai concluded that the lizard was strong and aggressive, but it only ran in a straight line and lacked intelligence. Trying to help in some way, Rojo used a knife, successfully penetrating its thick skin. While running, Rina tripped and fell to the ground. The monster had caught up to her and was about to step on her when it suddenly stopped. Move. When the girls looked around, they saw a knife piercing his head, and he was bleeding. They wondered if someone had saved them. But without time to answer their question, they decided not to stay there any longer and left. Kai had no reason to save them, but his conscience wouldn't allow him to ignore the situation. He thought to himself that things were not going to be easy, and that monsters like that were roaming freely in the surroundings of this world. He approached the monster's body when he suddenly sensed that someone was nearby. He hid behind the monster's body, knife to his throat. Terrified, and in a desperate attempt to save his life, he offered the murderer money in exchange for his life. But the monster looked around, but he didn't see anyone. After this, our boy also returned to his room to avoid any problems. After he left, a figure emerged from behind a wall. The person was completely covered in a robe, making it impossible to see their face. The person crushed the monster's head, squeezing its eyes, and muttered to himself, disappointed at how useless and weak the hero candidates were. But something that he found both strange and suspicious was that Kay smelled exactly like him. The next morning, Gus brought the dead monster's body to the hero candidates, who were shocked by the sight. Gallus explained to them that the monster had been found dead last night near the royal capital and continued, saying that the Demon King had led the monsters to a frenzy ensued, and as a result, they craved human flesh. He informed the hero candidates that they would be fighting against creatures like this monster. He then asked Stadi, who was an investigator, if he had noticed anything unusual about the monster, to which Stadi replied that he detected traces of sorcery, likely used by a mid to high-ranking demon. He suggested that perhaps they were scouting to assess the abilities of the new hero candidates. Ka, who happened to be listening to everything, wondered if sorcery differed from magic, and if it was perhaps a new term being used by demons. Suji inquired of the